So this is nerve-wracking. Being the speaker on a presenter on the last day after all the good presenters is like going up and being that guy who gives a speech after Martin Luther King. I have a dream. And literally I feel like everything that I had prepared to say was kind of hit on throughout this course. The prioritizing kids in ministry, importance of online presence, acts of compassion, endearing us with the community, renovating buildings, appeals, baptism. Let me just pray and see how the Lord leads this, because I'm not sure what to get into. Dear Heavenly Father, please help in Jesus' name, amen. All right. So my name's Edward Bryan, and me and my wife Zinnia have pastored in we pastor the Warner, a district, but the church we're going to talk about today is Warner Robins SDA Church in Georgia. Most of you have probably never heard of Warner Robins. We're from Atlanta. We hadn't heard of Warner Robins, and it was an hour south. But it's been a great place for us. Entitled the talk, Going Fishing. I believe that every church, every Christian has gone fishing in some sense of the word. I'm a big fan of basketball. My favorite show one of my favorite shows, Inside the NBA, has a segment during the playoffs called Gone Fishing, where they pay tribute to the teams that are put out of contention, that are put out of commission, and to their cities with this little design of them going fishing. Basically, they're retired, they're off, they have to wait for another season to contend again. A lot of churches are doing that type of fishing right now. But then there's the Christ model of going fishing, right? Fishing for men, Mark chapter 1, verse 17, where rather than being out of commission, you're in commission, you're fulfilling the commission. My church, WRSDA, we're going to talk about what it was, what it is, what it's about to be, and what was done. What it was a church out of commission, a church that had gone fishing. This is a picture of a high Sabbath. Back in 2017, beginning of 2018, there was about 59 members on the books with about 15 to 30 in the pews, depending who you ask. There was almost no youth. There had been no baptisms in a few years. We had exhausted elders and leaders, and it was only a handful. Church programming and activity in general was minimal. Community presence and the relationship with the community was pretty much non-existent. And the head elder / treasurer, who I love to death, had made the prediction upon arriving that it would probably be about 5 years before the church doors were closed permanently. And I think he was right. What it is now it's a church that goes fishing. We're a church that goes fishing. As of a month ago, we had 146 members on the books. However, we have about 200 plus in the pews weekly, with about 300 rotating monthly. And it's hard to know exactly how many because by the summer of 2019, we had outgrown the facility. We had outgrown the sanctuary. So it's hard to know how many because basically people show up at 11:40, 11 whatever, and they don't find seats for them and their families. They either go and watch the stream in the parking lot or they go home. Or they go to our overflow, which is the church at our sister conference. Word to the conference. Word to my conference. We got about 30 now, about 30 kids roughly, about 20 teenagers roughly rotating. We have multiple services and multiple congregations, multiple languages. We have excited elders and leaders. We don't just have leaders. We used to have like 2 elders. We have like 8 elders now and a small army of leaders, but not people that we got to sit there and force them. We don't beg anybody after nominating committee to be involved. We make one call, they accept excitedly, and it's just a really good environment to be in. The majority of our growth has been evangelistic, not transfer. And this is important to me. Nothing against folks who drum up excitement and get, but I'm not interested in, the ocean is so big, I don't wanna fish in the next church's pond. This means something to me. So I mentioned a moment ago that I think that the elder was right. He wears a lot of hats, the head elder. He's also treasurer. I think he may be a prophet because he predicted that in about 5 years, the doors of the church would probably be closed permanently. And he was probably right because as I'm doing this presentation right now, the property association for our conference should be putting the green light on us getting the loan to acquire a new property. This church right here across the street, we actually used it a few months ago to do an evangelistic campaign and filled it out. Let me see here. There we go. So this is the new church right here. So if you look over here, this is our church. And literally across the Jordan is the other church. It's about 4 times the size. Our 2 buildings are about 8,000 square feet combined. That one is over 32,000 square feet combined for both buildings. This is 20,000, and this is, I don't know, but this is going to be for our Spanish congregation. I pastor English church, but this is going to be for our Spanish congregation. This is going to be for our English congregation, the bigger building. And it sits on about 15 acres, where our current property sits on 4 acres. And it's just, and the way that God did it is incredible because we've had a space issue for 3 or 4 years. As a matter of fact, if this vote doesn't go positive, I don't know, man. But but the thing about it is that God took something that was a far-fetched dream and he did a miracle. They accepted our offer to give us the building for $1.1 million below their asking price. And we required them leaving all of the furniture, all of the tech equipment, all of the cameras, all of this lighting, sound, and everything. So God is in this, but let me get moving because I'm bad on time. I intentionally didn't use it. I drank a lot of water, so if you see me moving around, I did it on purpose so that I wouldn't hold y'all up too long. So what was done? What was done? Like I said, a lot of the points of what I was going to talk about that were going to be done have already been mentioned. I was thinking all night, like, what can I say that's actually original at this point? So I came up with this, right? But in reality, the reason why we use it so often as preachers is because this is it. This is what works. Relationships, building, serving disinterestedly, not just trying to encounter somebody and indoctrinate them, but actually caring for people. And this is what has worked for us. Before we jumped into fishing, we tried to prepare for fishing. We spent the first 6 months mostly just preparing gospel presentations on the love of Christ, trying to get it, I've pastored enough now that I no longer assume that most church members understand the gospel. And then when we go and we talk about the gospel, I no longer assume that most are indiscriminate and ready to receive visitors. So we kind of deal with that up front. We make an appeal to being mission-minded, to being disciples instead of members, and then we emphasize relationships, and then we tried to provide practical examples before we really jumped head first into fishing. And then we went fishing. Emphasize on we. Because leaders lead. I think one of the reasons why it's so difficult to get churches excited and involved in mission is because we like to delegate from the back. And then when it doesn't work, we like to denigrate and talk about what everybody's not doing when they're really just following our example. If you want people to follow, you have to model. So immediately, we started building relationships. Any visitor that came into church, I had to know them, and I had to build a sincere relationship with them. And we started emphasizing Bible studies, but immediately they had to race me to get to a Bible study with somebody in the church. Everybody I'm in the community, I'm trying to figure out how to connect with them, bring them in. And when the church is a safe place, God will send people, right? So because we were safe now, we had people coming in. Man, this timer, bro. I can't even talk about it, but God was sending folks already prepped. This is the crazy thing. God was sending folks already prepped from Evidence Ministries, doing their own studies. They're coming in. All they need is to be baptized. But because I like giving Bible studies, I was going to give it to them anyways, right? This gentleman, he became a really good friend, and he was just going through it. Former gang member. We're in an Air Force Base town. He's in the Air Force, but his life is falling apart because he's getting into all sorts of issues because of his alcoholism. He had been in gangs and things before. Now he was even in very high ranking in certain orders, societies and whatnot. But he just needed God so bad, and he would walk to the church, and he would sit there and he would listen, but you could tell he was not very approachable. But I approached him. We went to, had several meals together before, we were doing Bible studies. And the gentleman I showed on the last picture was baptized on the same day with my friend Posey here. These were the first 2 baptisms in that church in years. And then he became heavily involved in the church. Then we started a small group. Remember, once again, you have to lead. Not the church started a small group. We have to lead. We have to model it. So at our home, we had done this many times before. We started a small group. There was one other Hispanic family at the church. We met with them for lunch one day, and we said, hey, wouldn't you like to see a Spanish congregation? Oh, we would love that. Why don't the first people that we meet that are willing to come to the house, let's start a little small group on Friday evening. When that group turned into 10 or 12 people, we started a Bible study at 9:30 Saturday morning at the church. This was week number 1. When that group, after that Bible study, they were invited. They wanted to come over to the English service and guess what the speaker was saying. But when it grew to about 15 or 20, we started putting sermons of your favorite Spanish preachers on. When it grew to 30, we started inviting speakers. I started inviting out speakers that I knew from Atlanta. In about a year, we had grown the group here. With COVID, we took a big hit, obviously, and also the Hispanic community out there. It's like there's always a turnover period. Any growth that we have, it's with the realization that Hispanic folks are working for a season and they're gone. And on the English side, it's an Air Force Base town. People are shifting. So you got to stay working because there's no neutral. But we praise God that here we are, 3 years later, or 4 years later. This is the congregation a month ago. This is the congregation this Sabbath. We can't get far enough back to take a picture of the whole group because they have outgrown that building a long time ago, just like we've outgrown the sanctuary on the English side a long time ago. But God's good because you saw the picture. They're about to inherit their own building now. And we only do not incorporate them as their own group because it would be nonsensical because what they feed towards the youth and kids ministries and in human and in help and assistance. And the English side really helps out with the finances to keep them growing and stimulated. So it's a good partnership. But anyways, let me try to keep going. We fish with a net. In the Bible, they did not fish with fishing rods. They fished with nets, meaning we try to reach as broad an audience as possible. I don't do evangelism, as was mentioned earlier this week. We don't do evangelism once a month. I mean, 2 times a year on schedule. We do it every single Sabbath. Every single Sabbath. Every program has to be evangelistic. Every event that we do has to be evangelistic. Our board meetings, I don't want to scare y'all. Our board meetings go 2 and 3 hours sometimes, but I only do them about once a quarter. Because when we sit down and we got momentum, we're talking about evangelism 80% of the time. People are excited. They won't want to go. If we got to order some pizza, we order some pizza, but we're going to sit there and we have a board that's excited about evangelism, and that's all we do is start talking about how we can grow. Who cares about the carpet, right? We focus on the lowest common denominator. We focus on lowest, especially in the services and the preaching. Focus on the lowest. I used to be worried about preaching deep and, you know what I'm saying, hitting everybody with the meat. And then I realized the people that enjoy that, they would be back the next week no matter what you preached. The people who need to hear the gospel and need to get hope are the lowest common denominator. We're preaching for the non-believer. We're preaching for the searcher. We're preaching for the prodigal. We're preaching for the child who doesn't know anything about the gospel. And if you hit them, you can hit everybody if the message is relevant. And and it's interesting because you'll do a message that seems very simplistic, make an appeal, and you have somebody who's been in the church for a minute responding to that appeal, right? So anyways, and visitors and youth come first. I'm not saying what you need to do. This is, everything I'm sharing is just my opinion. Visitors and youth come first because I think that there's a misnomer. That, you hear the term like, somebody was born in the church. In my opinion, in my estimation, nobody is born in the church. Because the church is not the building, it's the people. You have to make a decision to accept Jesus Christ. A lot of these kids have been there forever seeing hypocrisy, not understanding, and we assume that they know what they don't know. No. We got to give them the priority that we give to visitors and that we give to new members. So, quick little story here, and I'm going to try to move as quick as I can. I'm in overtime now. We're doing an evangelistic series one week, and this couple comes in. At this point, we still don't really have kids. This couple comes in, and the guy comes and talks to me afterwards, and he says, he goes, I'm Adventist. I just haven't been in church for years. My wife is not Adventist. She's not that big on church, and especially not in the Adventist church, because the Adventist church in these little outlying towns, they don't have anything for our kids. And we've tried to go, and it's torture. So I'm just letting you know that because I really appreciate what you shared in the message this evening. But I don't know how to get my wife to want to come back, or our 2 young kids, or our kid who's about to be a teenager. I told him, bro, give me 2 weeks and come back. Let me figure this out. I'm already working on the older kids because for me, ministry was always about when my daughter was that age, that's what I worried about. So when she grew up and she was a little bit older, I was emphasizing on the older kids and the teens. But when he said that, I said, no, he needs that. So we went to the board meeting that week. We just happened to have board meeting. I said, we got to get a Pathfinder Club going. We got to get a messy church or something going, or a children's church. We got to get something. We have a family that's willing to come in, and this guy is serious. And I remember talking to him and visiting him the next day. Man, he was like a regional director for a nursing home. And he was just so enthusiastic. He was gung-ho. His wife was a professional. I said, man, these people I could just see the fire in their eyes, but they need something. And he's willing to come back in 2 weeks. Church board voted it. We did it. We went forward. We started this kids program. At that time, we probably had like 4 or 5 little kids coming. And that's because of the Spanish group. Within a month and a half, I'm not exaggerating, within a month and a half, we had 28 kids inside that children's church. And they came back and they were excited. Their older son was all gung-ho and he was excited about it. He joined the Pathfinder Club. He went to Oshkosh. He wanted to get baptized. He came back. We did Bible studies. He was the first one in this family to get baptized. His name is Aiden. That's a picture of him last week at the induction. This kid sings. He leads the group Bible study for our youth. He'll be preaching his first sermon for the church next week. His mom came out for 3 years. His mom came out for 3 years before she finally made a decision, and she was baptized about 6 months ago. The dad, who had came back to the Adventist church, quit drinking. He got so serious about the things of God, he just got on fire. He's now our youth director, and he's also an elder. We just voted him in the nominating committee, and he's the best lay preacher I've ever had in 10 churches. She heads up the children's ministry now. I didn't mention that. She heads the children's ministry, and she is phenomenal. She's a director of nurses. She is phenomenal. She oversees now the ministry that we started because they walked in the door and had that need. So she oversees the children's church, the youth classes, the Pathfinder group, the Adventurers Club. I don't know, we got like 2 or 3 others. And she oversees it all, and she's incredible. And so anyways, yeah, this is a need. Little girl Avery, sweet little Avery would come with her grandmother. We all know at our churches, right? You'll have 1 or 2 kids, and they come with grandma because the parent is out of the church already. Well, Avery, the more there was kid stuff, things for the kids, the more she would come. The more she would come, if grandma couldn't bring her, she's insisting on mom bringing her. And mom is just, you're seeing her more and more and more regularly. And this goes on for a couple of years. Last month, we baptized mom. Avery and grandma got to sit there and watch it. My wife gets a call 2 days ago where she's talking with somebody from our church, and she says, do you know that little Avery decided this weekend that she wants to get baptized? 3 generations of Christian women, and she's not nominal. She's on fire. Mom is on fire. Grandma's on fire. Avery's going to be on fire. We just had to provide something for them. So our bait that we use, we don't use flyers. We don't mail flyers. We don't do that. This is the bait. I don't personally believe that doing a series. I love doing evangelistic meetings. That's not bait for the non-believer. We use sports socials, movie nights, game nights. And when I say movie nights, we bought a big old outdoor screen where we could play movies for the community, especially during COVID. It was a real big thing. Mother's Day banquets, community Christmas party is our biggest event. Financial literacy classes, how to start a business classes, English as a second language classes, food pantry. And this is a type of series that we do that actually scratches where people in the community are itching. It's not that we don't do the other, but this is the one that's actual draw, mental health series and health programs. But when we go to the community, we go with flyers that are advertising these things. These things. We go to sign people up for food pantry stuff. We go to sign people up for free gifts. We advertise this stuff, and this is what hits. Let me try to keep this moving. With our Spanish ministry, every month, there's soccer. You advertise soccer and food, and they come out in droves. In the English ministries, we do it on Facebook. In the Spanish ministry, we don't have enough people, Hispanics in the community to want to flood Facebook, so we go to the communities one by one, and we go to the doors, and it's our youth that we use the most in doing this stuff now. So putting out bait, I think it's important to understand these 2 things. There's 2 types of bait, because this is not supposed to be about evangelism. It's supposed to be about revitalization. In revitalizing a church, there's 2 types of bait. There's fish bait and there's fisherman bait. And it's important to understand the difference between those things. There's things that appeal to your community, and there's things that appeal to your church. And the problem is usually we're taking the stuff that appeals to us as a church and trying to use it as bait for the community, and it's not working. But once people from the community come by and they're coming to your campus regularly, you know what works for us in evangelism? By God's grace, everything. Everything. You know why? Because there's always people on the campus. There's always people in the seats. There's always people at our events. So no matter what you do, you advertise, and there's going to be people there. But there's stuff that fish bait, fisherman bait. If you don't understand the difference. Now that beverage is alcohol-free, caffeine-free, dairy-free, sugar-free. It's good. But understand that that's why the fishermen come. That's not why the fish come. So understanding that difference, we try to have solid messages, dynamic preachers. Dynamic preachers are hard to get in outlying towns. You have to call 6 months to a year in advance, and even then you can't get some of them, but the squeaky wheel gets the grease, so you can stay at it. Diversity of speakers. One thing that's extremely important to me, because my community is diverse, it's extremely important to me that diversity be reflected in the speakers. I'm talking social class, age, gender, culture, ethnicity. Those are different things. It's important to me that those things be reflected in the speakers, because then you see it reflected in the pews. and with music as well. I'm not trying to target one particular culture. Me personally, I have a burden for targeting all. Once again, fishing with a net, casting it broad. Solid series, doctrinal series, prophecy series, revival weekends. This is for the people. This is what gets people excited within the church, but it's also what the visitors, when they become members, keeps them engaged so they don't want to fall away. That's the last series that we did. Solid programming, midweek service, kids, youth programming, adult ministries, women ministries, prayer lines, virtual services. This sounds like a lot, especially for a small church. It's not, because like I said, we got a lot of people coming, and my thing is not that everybody is not supposed to be at everything, but I do try to have something for everybody. And while that may not work some places, it's worked phenomenal for us. Our midweek service, you're saying, well, where's the meat? In the midweek service, our midweek service it was 2 years ago, it was Daniel study the whole thing. The next time it was Revelation. We prepare very solid, and people come out. We get a better attendance for our midweek service now than the church used to have on Sabbath service. And this is in a small town, or whatever, medium-sized town. Visitations. If you visit people, they will come out. Fellowship, opportunities, meals, outings, holidays. We take advantage of everything. Waste nothing. Child dedications, baptisms, that was already spoken about. This brings family out. Sometimes you spin your wheels trying to do evangelism in local settings, and no visitors come out. When you do a child dedication, as was pointed out, you already that is your evangelistic meeting setting. Take advantage of it. I have a big burden for meals, so I have to speak on this because you can see I have a big burden for meals. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. So did Jesus. And I always tell my church, it wasn't about the food, it was about the fellowship. You go through the book of Luke, and in almost every chapter, he's sitting there eating with somebody and sharing the gospel with them. How many times is he doing this at the synagogue? So we use tables as opposed to the pulpit. Yes, we reach people from here, but most of the people are reached and won at the table. So every opportunity to share meals with people, we do it. We have ministries where, like, the last Saturday of every month, First Angel Supper Club, we go to a restaurant of a different country. We organize it. I make arrangements with them to go after Sabbath, and we share about the culture of that country, about the history of it, about the spread of the gospel there. And we get every time between 30 to 60 members of a small church to go. And when I say members, it's like half members and like half people who are in the pipeline to become members. But this builds community and fellowship. And that's really why we have such a good job retaining and bringing people out, is because it does feel like a family there. Outdoor services. During COVID, everybody was hit hard. You know what? We went we started doing services back to back to back. We gave it a break for 2 months, and we jumped right back in. We did outdoor services, and then when we went inside, we went services back to back to back. The conference said, don't use money, evangelistic money, for speakers and equipment and furnishings. Well, what are you going to do during COVID? I used the money. I told the VP, I'm sorry. During that period, the local tithe doubled. I think they'll forgive me. People came and joined. I don't have time to get into these stories, but I wish I could tell you how people were falling in inexplicably, saying that, just basically asking, begging to be baptized. As you can see, and I'm closing. Yes. As you can see, most of our, or you can't see it yet, but you'll see it. Most of our growth has been young. We have been growing young. If I sat here and broke this down, you got a young man there that got out of prison, sold drugs right down the street, gave his life to the Lord, found belonging. You have a young man there that was in isolation on the brink of giving up and found community with other young adults, gave his life to the Lord. You got a young man there who was Hindu, Indian, started dating a Christian, didn't want to go to their church to figure out what it was about. So he came to ours, found community, and we baptized them. God is doing awesome things. He's been doing awesome things at the church. And this is what I'm most proud of. And I know I've gone way over on my time. I'm sorry. I tried to drink a lot of water. It didn't work. But this is what I'm most excited about. It's not just about this, right? Like, I'm still learning in conferences like this not to slow people down on baptism, because we've been thorough. But there is something that I think is important about giving Bible studies and things like that, because we say we baptize 50 folks, mostly young, in the last few years. there's only 3 people that are not still with us. 3 out of 50. And I know where they are. And I'm going to drop in on them. And God's going to reclaim them. But I think there's something to be said for retention also. So, yeah, I just praise God for that. And I praise God for what is upcoming. Don't have the time to get into that, but praise the Lord.